Okay. Okay. What's happening? Dinner time. It used to be considered really bad manners to eat and drink during teachings, but it seems like now, sometimes the Tibetans they would bring their picnics, depends. But normally speaking, it's considered really bad manners to eat and drink during teachings. I don't know, do people bring their bottles of water and everything? I suppose we do, don't we, these days? Poor girl, she's been... I know that, it's okay. Anyway, whatever. Do we eat our breakfast, do we eat our chips and things at Mass? I don't think so. Would you bring your chips to Mass? I don't think so. You know, the poor girl, she's the one who's been caught. I don't understand. Well, you should eat it before. Anyway, it's just, maybe things are changing in the West, but I know that when we first started taking teachings, it was considered unbelievably inappropriate to drink or eat during the teachings. You would never dare do it. Now things have changed. Maybe it's acceptable now, I don't know. Maybe we should think about the meaning of it. Because there's always meaning, you know, there's meaning there. Sorry, think about it. So we're here to listen to the Buddha's teachings. Where's Vero? Tell me again what you said that we're supposed to do. Okay. 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 So we take refuge and generate these thoughts of bodhicitta as our basis for listening to these teachings. Okay, sing the prayers.
Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema. Por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema. Por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema. Por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Esta tierra ungida con perfume y regada de flores, con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna, vista como una tierra pura de Budas, yo te ofrezco. Que todos los seres puedan gozar de una tierra así. Oh sagrado y venerable Lama, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría dharmakāyika, por favor, derrama una lluvia de Dharma vasto y profundo, de acuerdo precisamente con las necesidades de los que serán adiestrados. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kanilyatayami.
Okay. So, according to our tradition, you know, according to Lama Tsongkhapa's approach, the prerequisites for entering into the practice of Tantra, which means receiving an empowerment to practice, and eventually, you know, is to have in our mind, the very least, a really strong appreciation and understanding for, as Lama Tsongkhapa calls it, the 3 principal aspects of the path. It's just another way of presenting the Lam Rim from a slightly different perspective. You know, and the three are renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Well, in order to understand the psychology of Tantra, to understand how seeing yourself as some green lady or some multiple-armed male person, without understanding emptiness, it's impossible, literally impossible, literally impossible. It's like a joke. And without having bodhicitta as the basis of why you would want to practice, then it's also impossible. Without bodhicitta, it can't exist. And these two, without renunciation, both are impossible. So often, you know, His Holiness, they talk about, you know, I like this analogy, the two wings of the bird, the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. Well, the first stages of the wisdom wing is renunciation, the cultivation of renunciation. You know, and then very often you hear the lamas say, compassion is not enough. You need wisdom. And often they also say you cannot have compassion until you have renunciation. So we need, at least the very least, to have some decent intellectual comprehension of these three aspects of the path, but in particular, too, their relationship to each other, some kind of understanding of the logic of them. You know, not just say the words, but actually understand the relationship between these three. Why, you know, how, the relationship between emptiness and renunciation, the relationship between bodhicitta and renunciation. We need to understand this. We need to have a logical understanding of the path. And that can only come from listening, thinking, studying, meditating, you know. Then this is the basis. This is the basis. But another way to put it, I've heard Lama Zopa Rinpoche say, you know, the main basis of practicing Tantra is faith. Faith in the teachings. Complete 100% faith in the Guru Buddha, especially the Guru Buddha. If you're going to enter into Tantra, you need to have a strong confidence that the Guru is the Buddha. Because this is where the really serious levels of Guru devotion are practiced, which is the essence of all, which is the basis of all the teachings. You know, there are different levels of teaching Guru devotion, but all the lamas, because they come from this tradition, which is Vajrayana, and when these lamas talk about Guru devotion, it's always from the perspective of Vajrayana. They all say, you know, Lama Tsongkhapa says, it's the root of the path, it's the foundation of all good qualities. So faith in the Guru, faith in the Buddha is really the one. You could understand the teachings very nicely, but if you don't have faith and confidence in the Buddha, the Guru, then, you know, maybe you're not qualified. Put it this way, you could say. And as Lama Zopa says, forget about getting any tantric realizations. What a joke. The main reason also is to have an empowerment into these different Buddhas, the different deities, is to sow the seed for the future. Because we cannot, according to the Vajrayana teachings, according to Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, we cannot get enlightened without Tantra. So we need the seeds in our mind to make the connection with us and the Buddhas for the future. Because at some point they say when Maitreya comes, there won't be Tantra. So we need the seeds, the karmic connection. So from many points of view, it's necessary. We can say it's absolutely necessary. If we're in this path, it is necessary eventually to graduate to receive initiation. And in particular, the four initiations that are given, you know, within the empowerments, for example, of Kala Chakra, for example, of Vajrayogini, Haruka, Chakra Samvara, Yamantaka, the ones of highest Tantra. We need to receive these four empowerments, the vase, secret, wisdom, and word initiations, they call. These are necessary to get enlightened. They're actually necessary. I don't know, what else? Maybe, listen, ask me some questions first. Let me just see what's in your minds. I want to hear some questions. What people who are thinking seriously about this, tell me some questions. Let me hear. Then we can take it in a certain direction. Okay? Anybody have any questions about this? Yeah. Yeah.
There are practices in which, for example, in the Guru Puja, in the Lama Chopa, when you at the end, when there's you receive some initiation, you're supposed to receive initiations that have to do with those empowerments.
That's right. Then?
I've heard that there's when a person has completed an approximation retreat, they really receive the initiation, but if you haven't, it's not the same level of blessing or something like that. Is that true? Or
I don't know. I've never heard
you
that.
don't know. You don't
No, the
know.
fact that I've never heard it doesn't mean it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never heard that. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear different things. You hear, to actually receive initiation, you've got to have all the realizations. Actually receiving initiation is if you, we don't really receive initiation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say like this,
Yeah.
actually receive your initiation,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't say about that.
Another question.
Yeah.
Why is guru devotion so important to practice Tantra? What is the reason for that?
Well, you hear all the Lamas the way they talk. Bonka Rinpoche says, if the guru is not the Buddha, then who is? All the technical, all the kind of, for me, it seems to me, to talk about it in a very simple way, try and hear it in a very simple way, which I find helpful for my mind, to try and understand it in a simple psychological way, why we need a guru, It has to be the, if you think about it, just talk about it very simply. It has to be the experience of devotion. I mean, what's devotion, We talk about it in an ordinary way in relation to our children, let's say. I'm very devoted to my children. She's very devoted to her mother. And we know already it's got a very sweet sound to it. It means a person who's kind, helps other people, close, loving. But here, of course, it's not like that. Devotion. I mean, Lama Yeshe said, Lama Yeshe said, the teaching's not real for you until you hear it from somebody. You just read a book, think about something. It's just intellectual. But when there's a human being in front of you, I'm talking about ordinary life, a human being in front of you who has some knowledge and who passes it on to you, you'll never forget it. It's real then. It becomes real for you. As Lama Yeshe said, Buddha was here 2,500 years ago. But it's not real for us. But it's only when we have a lama, a guru, a person heavy with knowledge, the Sanskrit word it means apparently, heavy with qualities, then it becomes real for you. And it seems to me, this is my way of talking about it, okay? It's not how they talk in the texts. That without emptiness, there's no realizations at all. It's impossible. And without devotion, you can't, I don't think you can realize emptiness. It's just my way of talking. I'm really not sure. Just talking about it, You think about, another thing Lama Yeshe said, he says, we're dying for love. It was such a sweet way to put it. We are dying for love. And most of course, it's attachment, and we're just hungry like a vampire for someone to see me and hear me and love me and embrace me and know me and protect me and look after me and all the blah, blah, blah. We're hungry for love. Well, how about having a Buddha whom we give our hearts to? Can't do better than this, Somehow. The one of emptiness, for example. It seems to me that the teaching of not believing in ordinary appearances, not believing in what you see, not believing in the way things appear to our deluded, mundane mind, and this is how they talk, certainly in Tantra, the way they say that we suffer, as far as Tantra is concerned, the reason we suffer because of ignorance, but because of deluded karma over countless lives, we suffer because we see things as mundane. We're therefore not seeing things as they exist. So the one of devotion, there's a person, the teaching is that the Dharmakaya, the Buddha mind, the Dharmakaya, the enlightened mind, which pervades the universe, which is omniscient, which means it sees that which exists, which includes your mind perfectly, and all the minds and the karma of all sentient beings perfectly, which has infinite compassion, no sense of separateness from every single being in the universe, the wish only to benefit them, and the power to effortlessly manifest in trillions of forms throughout trillions of universes for the sake of these trillions of sentient beings. That's the Buddha. That's the Dharmakaya. So what we are doing is here practicing, seeing an ordinary-looking human person, say the Dalai Lama. We all know he's a nice guy. We like the Dalai Lama. He's friendly. He's lovely. People cry. They love him. But to say that that means he's a Buddha is a bit of a joke. Excuse me. You can't see this. So the practice of suspending your own deluded view as a nice person there to actually saying there actually is the manifestation of the Buddha mind, that really does take massive practice. And it seems to me without this, how can we break down this sense of subject-object, which is one of the main obstacles to having ego grasping, the sense of separateness from others. So it's the practice of emptiness. And then this is my way of talking, okay? Don't quote this as Buddha's teachings, but think about it. So to combine that with devotion, and devotion is, when you read the teachings of the great yogis and their bliss and devotion that they have for their gurus, their hair standing on end and they faint and have blissful experiences, like when you especially read the great yogis, or even like the Catholic saints, the way they relate it, like Saint Teresa, her experiences of bliss in the face of God. This devotion, it seems to me, is such a powerful tool combined with bodhicitta and emptiness that completely cuts the sense of self. It completely cuts a sense of the ordinary self. I have no idea if I'm making any sense to you. Because what we're trying to do in Tantra, all we're doing in Tantra is practicing, imagining first out there the Buddha as Tara, Chenrezig, whatever, Vajrayogini, in this, idealized form, coming from India, this red lady, naked, representing purified desire energy, which seems already so abstract for us, but we're accepting that that's what she represents, the Buddha manifesting in this aspect. So we're imagining her first out there, and then, in the simplest sense, we're then absorbing that, seeing her as oneness with our Lama manifesting as Vajrayogini. Our Lama is Vajrayogini. Whenever we think Lama, we think Vajrayogini. Whenever we think Vajrayogini, we think Lama. So that itself brings incredible bliss, devotion, as it grows in our mind, and we have to grow it. It doesn't come naturally. It grows with morality. It grows with practice. It grows with our understanding of emptiness. It grows with our understanding of compassion, this devotion, this confidence, faith that the Guru is the Buddha is the Guru. So this seems to me itself is the tool that enables us then to identify with that. And then we absorb it into ourselves, and we go through the 8 stages of death, doing transforming the 3 kayas into the path, where you then go all the way down to the Dharmakaya yourself, where you literally become oneness with the absolute Guru, which is another word for the Dharmakaya. It seems to me without devotion, we can't get anywhere. Ordinary, forget Tantra. What about Sutra, If you don't, because devotion, also mixed with emptiness, mixed with bodhicitta, mixed with renunciation, mixed with humility, seems to be the method. All of this combined is the one that smashes ego. It seems to me total devotion based upon emptiness and bodhicitta and renunciation is what smashes ego, which is the point. It's the whole point of the job. It's the point. It's the point. If you look at all the lamas we really respect, you look at them in the face of their guru, in relation to their guru, the humility is beyond bearing. I mean, I see Lama Zopa, in the presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's almost embarrassing for us arrogant, upstanding, arrogant modern people. It's almost embarrassing to see this unbelievable humility, this unbelievable egolessness. That's devotion. That seems to me almost like the petrol, the juice that grows the realizations. Excuse me, I'm just talking in my own words, in my own trying to understand why they say the guru is necessary. Does it make sense to you people what I'm saying? Because as long as there's a separate sense of self, which is the natural function of ego grasping, then there's no devotion. If we didn't have attachment, if we didn't have attachment, we would be egoless, we would be blissful, we would be completely egoless. And of course, we didn't have attachment, we'd be able to realize emptiness in a blink of an eye, which is the point of all this. The point of it is to go beyond ego, give up delusions, realize emptiness, have bodhicitta. They're all just different methods to smash ego grasping. They're just different methods to smash this sense of a separate self, which is the cause of all suffering. They're all just methods to do this in Tantra as well. They're just variations of those methods. You hear all the stories about the ones who've got great devotion, how this cuts across everything. With, we on the one side we hear His Holiness say, you've got to study, you've got to this, you've got to that, study. But then you hear these stories, In the teachings I'm editing of Lama Zopa's about death, he's talking about even just the good heart. Having a good heart, he said. Even just having a good heart can get you realizations. So what does that mean? Technically, think of it. It means good heart is the opposite of ego, isn't it? Good heart is opposite of ego, opposite of I, obviously. He talked about one humble monk in the monastery who was a student of Ugyen Tsetan Rinpoche, one of the big teachers at Sergei. And he said he requested him to give him the blessing to do a 3-year Vajrayogini retreat. And Rinpoche said to him, well, tell me the 3 principal aspects of the path. And the monk couldn't. And then he said, you mean you want to do a 3-year Vajrayogini retreat, and you don't even know the 3 aspects of the path? But he went and did the retreat anyway, and he got realizations and died in meditation because of good heart and guru devotion. You hear stories about Atisha's student, Dromtompa, taking care of when Atisha was very old and crippled and he couldn't do anything. And Dromtompa would put his hands out for Atisha to put his to shit into, his hot shit into his hands. And he's walking down the steps and he goes into bliss, into samadhi, has realizations on the basis of his devotion. You hear these stories, You hear the story, who is it, Tilopa and Naropa? I never know whose disciple is, who's the guru. Who's the disciple and who's the guru? Tilopa and Naropa. Who knows? Tilopa. The guru. Okay, so there's Tilopa. There's Naropa begging and begging and begging Tilopa for initiation. Begging and begging, and he won't give. He doesn't give. So one day they're in the desert or something. You hear the lamas teach it in different ways. According to who tells you the story, it's all oral. So there they are walking in the desert. This is how Lama Yeshe told it. And then suddenly Tilopa says, now is the time for initiation. So Naropa wants to make a mandala offering to him as a request, He must offer first. But he couldn't find anything except the sand. So then the sand was too dry, so he peed on the sand, so it turned into mud, and he made a mandala and offered, and then Tilopa got it and chucked it on his head, and he went into samadhi, So he really got an initiation. Actually, that reminds me. I think I want to read something to you, okay? I hope I have it here. Otherwise, I have to run home and get my computer. I think I mustn't have brought it with me. This is a very great pity. I haven't transferred everything over here. Let me see if I've got it. What a pity. Isn't there a way you can access your computer via your iPad? But I haven't done all the things, have I? Let me see. I don't think I've got it. No, I haven't got it. Anyway, one of our nuns who's been meditating for years and years and years, Tupim Pemo. I don't know if anybody knows her. Anyway, she's a student of Lama Yeshe Lama Zopa. And she went off and finally was doing a long retreat And she wrote to Rinpoche from her retreat, explaining some things about her meditation with some questions. And then sometimes when I was editing Mandala magazine, Rinpoche would send me letters from his disciples and ask me to publish them for people anonymously, because they were so beneficial, so powerful to see ordinary people like us having realizations, you know. So this extraordinary the things she talked about in her letter to Rinpoche, where she was sitting there getting ready to do her breakfast, and then her breath stopped, and all the breath gathered to her heart chakra, which is what happens when you go into deep meditation. And she sat there for hours in this bliss of the clear light mind. And then it occurred to her, she said, Haruka appeared. And then it occurred to her to ask him for initiation. So she received from him the 4 initiations. No, she didn't get to the word initiation, but then the next day, she then requested the word initiation. I mean, an ordinary person sitting there at breakfast, and she'd go, her breath would stop for hours on end, because she went straight to the clear light mind. And you could hear in the way she wrote her letter, it was completely full of devotion. It was humble, completely devoted to Rinpoche. And you think about, you know, how could you possibly, what a realization is, by definition, is an experience of egolessness. And what more powerful method is there than to become one with your Lama as the Buddha? That's what realizations are about. So it's both the method and the result, it seems to me, you know. When we understand the way ego works, which is the delusions cause us to have and believe in and maintain daily this very powerful sense of a separate self. And what we're trying to do is go beyond the separate self, quite literally. So it seems to me devotion, I have to keep saying it, devotion is the key to this. If there's arrogance, for example, if there's attachment, it's like a nightmare. The stories about some yogi who was a very good, technically good meditator, a Yamantaka practitioner, because he had attachment, he died, and he was reborn as a preta looking like Yamantaka. So think about what else would it be that would smash the quickest way, you know, the quickest way to smash ego grasping, to smash the sense of a separate self, to develop humility, which is an indication of less ego, to develop goodness, compassion, which is an indication of less ego. Devotion has to be like the juice that nourishes it, that makes it happen, it seems to me. Just talking in an ordinary way, you know, seems to me. I have no idea, Veronica. That's the best I can say. Because all the practices in Tantra are about this. Seeing, identifying with and becoming oneness with the Guru Buddha. The Guru Buddha. Inseparable. They say all this, they say in the teachings, and as long as you see the Guru and the Buddha separate, you'll never, ever, 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 ever get realizations. And why not? Technically, logically, because the Guru is appearing in a form that looks like us, that is to say, deluded human, as long as we think they're ordinary deluded human, then the mind is buying into our own karmic appearances, which means you're preventing the mind from having realizations. It seems like logical almost. And it's a really hard practice, because how do you, as we would all say, well, how do I know he's the Buddha? Well, you don't. You can't possibly. Impossible. Because that would, if you did know, that means you're a Buddha as well. Then you don't need. It's okay. So, you know, really this one of faith is such a tricky one, you know, because you have to have confidence. You have to be reasonable. You have to be intelligent about it. But then you've got to really work hard at it. Really practice at knowing how to think and catching every single moment, the mind that believes in its karmic appearances, you know. So this is the toughest one, really, and it can only grow slowly. But this is why we need the grounding in the other teachings. Because my feeling is, without bodhicitta, without understanding a little bit about bodhicitta, or the bodhisattva path in general, it's impossible to understand how a person who looks like me, ordinary, and can then maybe manifest being rude to me, and that be anything but a mistake. It's impossible without understanding the Mahayana teachings how that's possible. It's impossible to understand that without understanding the Mahayana teachings. It's impossible. Then it's impossible to understand how that can be possible without karma. And it's impossible to understand how all this can happen without bodhicitta and without emptiness. So we've got to have the basis of the three principles. We've got to have bodhicitta and emptiness. You've got to have bodhicitta because that's the petrol, that's the gas of the bodhisattva. That's the reason beneath their wish to do this in the first place. You've got to understand emptiness in order to understand how on earth you can transform ordinary you into something sublime. And to get these two, you've got to understand renunciation, which means you've got to understand what the mind is, you've got to understand what delusions are, you've got to understand suffering and its causes, which is the Four Noble Truths and all the basics of the path, the nuts and bolts of the basic of the path. So you've got to have a grounding. Otherwise, Tantra is like a joke. Guru devotion is like a joke. Then once you do, also what's serious is knowing what your commitments and your vows are. And this is the biggest stumbling block, I think, for all of us, you know. I think I mentioned this. Didn't I mention this last week? No, I didn't mention this at all. Okay. Okay, right. Well, you see, over the years, because I'm going around, Lama Zopa asked me to teach. He asked me to teach back in 1987 when I finished working for Wisdom Publications. That was my first job for 10 years for the Lamas, for the FEMT. When I first became a nun until 1987, 10 years, I was working for Wisdom Publications, and then that job stopped. And I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I did a retreat with Lama Zopa Rinpoche in New Zealand and had a meeting. And then always, my memory of when he told me what to do, it's like that big Michelangelo picture. One of the ones was God, you know, in the Siena, and in the Sistine Chapel when God is touching this one. And I always have this vision of Lama Zopa Rinpoche saying, he said to me, this is how I think of it, go to Sydney and teach. That's when he told me to teach. Back in 1987, he told me to do this job. I always remember him as if it's like God saying, go to Sydney and teach. It sounds funny to say it like that. But that's my memory of it. Go to Sydney and teach. What was interesting for me, that experience, was because the 10 years before that, when I first met the Lamas, the two together, when I first met them, it was Lama Yeshe who grabbed my heart. You know, Lama Yeshe was my main Lama. I could see Lama Zopa that was perfect, a holy being, but he sort of like was behind Lama Yeshe. I couldn't see him properly, you know. And then when Lama Yeshe passed away, I had to make effort, because I knew Lama Zopa was my Lama, but I had to make effort to connect with Rinpoche, to pray and make offerings and all these things. So that was the first time that Lama Zopa kind of picked me up and took care of me. Go to Sydney and teach, he said. So anyway, that's what I do. I go around his centres teaching. Well, some people like you're like cousins, you know. You're my cousins. I go to my other brothers and sisters, and then you're my cousins. Well, probably actually we've received initiation from many of us from the same lamas, so we're all Vajra brothers and sisters, aren't we? So anyway, one of the things that happens regularly, of course, because it's degenerate times, you know, but I'm not just us Westerners, I think it's among Tibetans as well. We go and receive initiations, and we haven't got a clue what we're doing. I remember when I first went to Kathmandu, and I went to one other monastery, and they said, oh, there's some lama giving some wongs. I said, what wong? What's a wong? Oh, initiation. Oh, all right then. So I went along, and I sat there thinking, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Not a clue what I was doing. But I sat there thinking I'm taking initiations. I had no idea of anything, you know. And this is very common, unfortunately. And then, unfortunately, many people, even in the other traditions, I have to say this, there was recently a friend of mine in Canada who's mainly Nyingma Kagyu. He's taken the equivalent of highest yoga tantra initiations, and he has never heard of tantric vows. Many of them say they've got the bodhisattva vow singular. They don't realize they've got 18 root vows and 46 secondary vows. So there's just an incredible ignorance. I don't know what it's about, because it's among the Tibetans as well, when you go to initiations, that you don't get told all these things. It's very curious. I don't understand it. But never mind, it's how it is. And then after you've taken them, then all the lamas threaten you with the Vajra hells forever if you don't keep all your vows and your commitments. And we're breaking them like rain, and we have hundreds and thousands. You go, oh yeah, really? You didn't know. I'm not blaming anybody. So it's really important we know what we're getting into, you know. So I remember a few years ago, not very long, 3 years ago maybe, at Lama Zopa Center in Boston, Kurukula Center. Some people had received the Kala Chakra initiation from His Holiness, and they asked me when I was there for the 2 weeks if I would just help them understand the practices. So the other people who've taken initiation came along as well. And, you know, and I started explaining, we've got this initiation, we've got that initiation, we've got this commitment and that vow and this one and that one. And then and this one woman say, I've been practicing for 30 years, but I didn't know that. I haven't heard that before. She didn't know, and she was speechless, you know. So it forced me, which has been so good for my mind, to go and research and put together into one document, which I've done, and I've sent Vero a copy, a 225-page document. The commitments and the vows we've taken. So then, okay, I'll go into them in a minute. This is important. But part of our problem is because we're also degenerate and we're also childish. As soon as we hear a vow, we go, oh my God, I don't want to do a vow. I can't do that, you know. But so again, I want to talk in a really practical way of what a vow is and what it means. So if you go to learn to drive a car, and if you had to write down for me the instructions for how to drive a car, you'd probably have 100 different things to tell me, wouldn't you? I'd have to learn at least 100 things, easily, just to drive a car nicely. So I'm not going to complain and say, well, I don't want to learn all these vows, do this and do that. And also, what do you mean don't do this? Who's telling me what to do? So if you wrote down a thing about how to drive on the freeway, one of the things you'd say is, don't drive more than 100 kilometres an hour. Don't drive into the wrong lane at the wrong... You'd say all these don'ts, wouldn't you? You'd have a list of don'ts, right? Well, we're very grateful that someone tells us all these things. Otherwise, we'd kill ourselves. But as soon as it comes to spiritual, and we hear a thing called a vow, which is a don't, we sort of think, oh, vow. I'm not going to learn a vow, you know. But it's all these vows are and commitments. Okay, first of all, a vow, it seems, is a vow not to do something. And a commitment is a decision to do something. So we have these vows and we have these commitments. So that generally speaking, we kind of, you know, when it's really degenerate, we know we've got this tantric vow, we've got a bodhisattva vow. But actually there's a whole series of things. So in this document, you know, the first page is the list of all the things that we've got if we take what's called a highest yoga tantra or a highest tantra initiation or empowerment. So first of all, you've got, it implies you've got the bodhisattva vows. So with the tantric vows, it's 14 root vows. And then there's a bunch of secondary ones. They're listed differently according to the different ways of talking, you know. But it's usually about 8 and 6 and 3, about 8, 6, 15, 20 or something. Different groupings of secondary tantric vows. Then if you've got a mother tantra initiation, you have another 10 on top of that. That's for tantra. Then and having those, if you receive, for example, a highest yoga tantra initiation or empowerment, it necessarily means that you have those. It also therefore implies you have the level of vows called the bodhisattva vows. It implies it. If you haven't never taken them before, you will take them at the initiation. You must have those. You can't possibly have tantric vows if you don't have bodhisattva vows. So the bodhisattva vows, there are 18 root vows, and then there are 46 secondary vows, and all the 46, or most of them, are divided into the 6 perfections, vows that are related to your ability to practice the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva. So having those implies you have the lay vows. And this means, and this is where it's a bit shocking, but when you read the tantric vows, one grouping of the secondary tantric vows is to keep the 5 lay vows. Strictly speaking, you have, even if you haven't taken them all in the beginning, like the alcohol one, when you take a tantric initiation, your secondary vows, one grouping of them is to to keep the first 4, and then plus the alcohol one. They say it like that. So it's really interesting. And the commentaries, you know, in this book, I've excerpted some commentaries from Alex Berzin's website, because Alex Berzin is an incredibly reliable source. Anybody, even the Ning Mapa and the Kagyu friends of mine who deny they've got any of these, and I say, well, please go and look at this website, and you're going to understand that you have. Because he's got lamas in these different traditions, and he's really knowledgeable in all the different traditions. He knows exactly who's got what, where, how, you know. So if you want to check up on things, just read Berzin. He's incredibly skillful. On Kala Chakra, on so many things. He's an amazing source, you know. His website is incredible. BerzinArchives.com. So I've excerpted quite a bit of his stuff in this book, you know. Commentaries especially on the Tantric vows. But I know there are 2 or 3 or more very good Gelug Lamas commentaries on the Tantric vows. And my feeling is you should really all study them together. They're excellent sources. You couldn't wish for better, you know. So having also the lay vows implies you've taken refuge, which means you've got refuge commitments. So you start with refuge. You've got commitments there to take refuge 3 times a day, 3 times morning and night. You have a commitment, an agreement. It's like with the lamas, I think of it this way. You write a contract, and you sign that contract with your lama. We know in our world you would never just break a contract. We'd be embarrassed. Well, this is what we're doing here. We're signing a contract with our lamas, you know. You start with refuge, then you're the lay vows, then the bodhisattva vows, then the tantric vows, and then as well within Tantra, many commitments that we're taking. So it sounds like a lot, but it's not that many. It's not that many. It's not that many. And the point is, what is the purpose of them? Well, like the instructions on how to drive a car, it's to help you become a better driver. When you learn all the do's and don'ts about playing a piano or using a computer or making a cake, there's always do's and don'ts. And we hungrily learn them because we want to be a good cake maker. Well, here we're trying to become a Buddha, and all these vows and commitments are these wonderful, sweet instructions on helping us do precisely that. We should be dying to read the commentaries. We should be dying to know each of the instructions, you know. They are so, so helpful. And the point is, if, you know, we are committing to do this, these various things, vowing a certain every single day we'll do this, and committing every single day we do that, if you don't even know what they are, how do you even know that you've broken them? I mean, it's just like double trouble, you know. So it really doesn't take that much to learn them all. It really does not, because we're so technologically minded. We're so intelligent. We learn so much information. We've learned so much information to learn anything. We've internalized so much information. But for some reason, this stuff seems to freak us out. I find it very fascinating. I see my own mind as well, you know. There's this laziness in us. A laziness, you know, and we like to mystify this stuff. Spiritual, you know. And all the lamas say, you hear the lamas, they all say, keeping your vows and commitments really purely and doing nothing else, you will get enlightened in a few bars. Guaranteed. So then that, you know, we've got to understand the logic of this. They use the term in Tantra especially of keeping your word of honor. It's like your word of honor. You shake hands, you write a contract. That's a word of honor. That's your samaya, your commitments. So there's not just the tantric vows, but the other thing in Tantra is that they talk about how you've got these commitments related, the 19 commitments related to the 5 Buddha families. But the more we understand all these different Buddhas, because I'm sure we talked about this already, the Buddha. So what is the Buddha? Right back to basics. What is the Buddha? Buddha actually is the Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya, Sanskrit word that refers to the fully enlightened consciousness, necessarily pervading the universe, necessarily all-pervasive. There's nowhere where there is existence where this consciousness can't be. It would be an impossibility. It's a logical impossibility, because an omniscient mind cognizes that which exists, which means that mind is there. This mind has infinite compassion and infinite power. So the Dharmakaya is the actual Buddha, the absolute Buddha, the absolute Guru, they call it. Then then you break it down. We did all this, I'm sure, into the two, into one, into the Rupa Kaya, which is called the form body. It's the forms in which that Buddha mind manifests to benefit sentient beings. So then you've got those, the Rupakaya is divided into two. What they call the emanation body, or the Nirmanakaya, or in Tibetan, Tulku, and then the Sambhogakaya, or the enjoyment body. So basically, all the Buddhas in the pictures we see, the Kala Chakra, or the deities as they call, this is a term they use in Tantra that's equivalent to the word Buddha. So if you want to look at the picture, there's Dharmakaya, divided into two, Rupakaya, and then that into one, then divided into two, Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. Then under the Sambhogakaya, you've got the main Buddha in Tantra, Vajradhara, or in Tibetan, Dojichang, blue, sometimes with his consort, sometimes not. But that's the general main Buddha in Tantra. And then if you like, you can divide, underneath him is 5 divisions, and that's the 5 Buddha families. And all they are manifestations of different qualities, either that we're trying to purify or that we're trying to cultivate, whichever you prefer, whichever way you want to look at it. And then under those are all the other Buddhas. So all the Buddhas are simply manifestations in subtle light bodies, and it's only the great bodhisattva yogis who can actually see them with their subtle mind. They can't appear to gross minds like ours. All they are different manifestations of different psychological qualities. And there's thousands of them, billions, trillions, pervading the universe, these different emanation forms, these Sambhogakayas, the bodhisattva aspect. So they're just psychological qualities. That's all they are. That's all they are. And every one of them is one that all it is showing us what we need to practice in order to cultivate that quality, So the 19 commitments related to the 5 Buddha families is a very nice way to help us cultivate a close relationship with those qualities that they represent. And the point in the Gelug tradition, we have one of the key commitments we have is the recitation 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night of this little Vajradhara sadhana, a short Vajradhara practice called the 6-session Guru Yoga. And it is said that 17 of those 19 commitments to those 5 Buddha families, which we are committed to having taken the highest Yoga Tantra initiation, are fulfilled when you do the 6-session Guru Yoga. And then the other 2, the always having in our presence, in our possession, a dorje and a bell, which actually represent the 2 wings of the bird in Tantra, so are really powerful, meaningful, precious, special phenomena, objects to possess. These are the other 2, to have on our person these 2. There's a commitment we've made. And if you don't have them, there's a picture, and this picture is in this book, And you can print it out like a credit card and put it into your purse, into your wallet. One Lama, I remember watching a YouTube video of one Gelugpa Lama, he said, actually, we really are committed to carry all these kind of bone ornaments and God knows what. You practically need a pickup truck to carry them all around, So luckily, a picture will do. It's degenerate times, okay? So these 19 are just methods, are commitments, sweet, lovely commitments we have made our word of honor with our Lama, whom we've shaken hands with and agreed. His Holiness says, I'll give you this, and he's getting us to agree. We'll keep our side of the bargain. We're like committing to that. We're writing a contract with His Holiness. Nothing in our world would want us to bear to break this, We should only want to keep our word of honor. So these 19. And one of these is the commitment to always see ourself as the deity. It's one of our commitments in Tantra, to have this divine pride of being that deity. And also you're committed to see the whole, the Lamas all say, also you should see the whole universe as the pure land of that deity and all other beings as a manifestation of the deities. Because this is a method, this is what Tantra is, a unique method to help us cut our usual mundane view. We're trying to lift our view to see things as sublime in the nature of bliss and emptiness, you know. So there's 19, it's not many things. Read them, sweet little commentaries in the text, there's brief instructions from Rinpoche, Lama Zopa, and then there's a little bit of extra, very nice explanation by Berzin of the 5 Buddha families. Then you've got your, you know, the tantric vows, and it's not that complicated. Then there's the bodhisattva vows, and in this also there's a commentary. There's some commentary. It's like a JPEG, an old document I had of a 1982 document typed. It's been photoed, and it's a bit rough looking in the book. But it's commentary mostly from Courtin Rinpoche and other lamas with little comments on the meaning of the bodhisattva vows. But included as well is Berzin's commentary on the bodhisattva vows. And his are really clear, because in each of the key thing about bodhisattva vows, okay, the key thing about lay vows, because it's part of the Hinayana, there's no wiggle room. There's no discussion of motivation. You just don't kill. You just don't lie. You just don't cheat on your partner. There's no sort of because. You just don't do it. But the bodhisattva vows, which are more powerful vows, there's also just a series of don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. But the point here is the key factor about the bodhisattva vows is the motivation behind doing the action. So even you could have one secondary vow, which sounds the same as a root vow, the difference is the motivation. So, and Berzin is really clear in listing each time they do this because of attachment, laziness, and It's so clear, such clear instructions. So, you know, we have these vows that if we don't know them, we're breaking them all the time. For example, we've got a vow when someone offers you something, like some food. Oh, have a chocolate, you know. And we say no, sorry, I don't like chocolate. We break a bodhisattva vow. Why? Because that is preventing that person from creating merit. And that's the point in the bodhisattva teachings. The point in the bodhisattva teachings is that we, attempting to become bodhisattvas, are trying to help sentient beings. And one of the ways we help sentient beings is help them create merit. So something as simple as this, you know. Okay, you'd break it, not because you say no, but because, you know, you don't like it, or you don't like the person much, or you're just full, you're not, you know, it's just, even if a person on the street offers you something. You know, people walk by and people offer you little advertisements for cafes and things, don't they? They hand out things. Excuse me, you say no, thank you. Don't, you should accept it. You just help that person create merit, even offering you a piece of paper. It's a very sweet way to think, you know. A person invites you for a meal, invites you for dinner. No, I'm too busy, sorry. Thanks a lot. You break a vow. Because your motivation is you don't like them that much, or you can't be bothered, you know. Look at our minds. You see, in other words, these bodhisattva vows are so sweet because they're forcing us out of the usual way of doing things. And what's the usual way of doing things? Everything that suits me, based upon my attachment, you know. The reason we accept food is because we're attached to it. That's not virtue. And the reason we don't accept it is because we're not attached to it. That's not virtue either. So it's a difficult one. So we need to just be conscious of these. They're little, very meaningful things to help us shift, you know, the way we usually do things. And you won't know it if you don't read them. That's the 46 secondary. And then there's the 18 root. And then usually the breaking of the vows, it's quite heavy to break a vow, and it's quite heavy to even, you know, to want to break a vow. We did it one weekend, someone discussing the breaking of a killing vow, you know. So you have to know to break it at the root vows. If you break one, you break them all. You break the lot. That means you have to take them again in front of somebody. But you break a root vow if you know it's a vow and you don't care, and you have no remorse, and you're happy to do it again, and you have no conscience about it. I mean, I think it's clear in here. Berzin says it exactly. And Lama Zopa, I think, too. But these things, they're all in the book, you know. It's not, again, not that complicated, not that complicated, not that complicated. Just have to read them and think about them. So there's the refuge commitments, about 6 different things. Some things to avoid and some things to do. Then there's the lay vows. Then there's the bodhisattva vows, the 18 root, the 46 secondary. Then there are the 14 root tantric and the other about 20 secondary. And then if it's a mother tantra, and usually in Gelugpa, I think Kalachakra's mother tantra, isn't it? I think it's taught this way. And if you've got mother tantra, then you've got this extra 10 mother tantra vows. And again, there's a very clear commentary from Berzin in there. Very helpful. Then your 19 commitments to the 5 Buddha families, which you keep by doing the 6-session Guru Yoga and having your Dorjian bell. So, no. Any questions? Questions? It's coming. I mean, it's a book. It's one that I put together from different teachings as a PDF, and Vero has got it. So I think it's really worthwhile if you use it as a basis. Yeah. Use it as a basis, yeah. She'll have it, and people can have it if you want. Yeah. Any other questions? Berzin Archives. Berzin. Alexander Berzin is a well-known American translator and teacher. BerzinArchives.com. He's just an incredible mine of information. He teaches extensively. He speaks other languages. He speaks Tibetan. He's just really marvelous resource. You can trust him. You can trust him. The only difficulty is he has his own very unique translation terms. And sometimes you haven't got a clue what he's saying because everybody else doesn't. Nobody uses his terms except him. So you've got to learn to know what he's talking about, I don't know if I covered what you thought I should cover. Have I covered what you thought I should cover? Have I covered what you thought I should cover? Huh? What do you mean part of it? What else do you want? What else do you want?
What's your definition of renunciation?
We did it all last week.
Well.
Okay, my definition is the Buddha's definition.
For a tantric practitioner, I mean, why is it important?
But we did all this last week. Do you want me to say it again? Okay, I'll say it again. Okay. Okay, we'll go through the 3 principles then. Okay. So renunciation is the accomplishment, is what we will accomplish from practicing the lower and middle scope, or junior school and high school. We will accomplish renunciation from practicing these. So what we're practicing in junior school is essentially the culmination of the steps of the path up to the end of the lowest scope. The culmination of it is abiding by the laws of karma. So as we know, the Buddha says, everything we think and do and say leaves seeds in my mind that will ripen as my future experiences. So this most obvious low-level renunciation is this complete disgust with the thought of my future suffering, the lower realms, not to mention the other results. Being harmed, being killed, lied to, stolen from, no money, no food, whatever the suffering is of ordinary world, all of this is the consequence of my past negative actions. This is the grossest level of suffering. So renunciation at the most basic level is, number 1, understanding that I am sick of suffering. But number 2 is knowing the reasons why I suffer, because of karma. And then the second reason, which we learn from the second scope, which is the real reason, the 2 causes of suffering in the second noble truth, karma and delusions. We learn about karma in the first scope. We learn about delusions in the second scope, in depth. So by practicing these 2 scopes, we get renunciation, which is 1, I am sick, revolted, fed up with suffering. But the real thing that makes it renunciation is finally I now know why I'm suffering, because of my past karma and my delusions. So having this means renunciation. So why do I need renunciation? Because I've got to give up delusions and attachment. And why do I want to do that? Because if I'm going to practice Tantra, which is using delusions on the path, I better have to first give them up and understand them profoundly and deeply and precisely. That's why it's an impossibility to even comprehend intellectually the meaning of Tantra without having renunciation. And in order to have renunciation, you've got to understand the delusions, because the main cause of suffering, of even why you create negative karma, is the delusions, which is what you get in the second scope, in the high school. This is where you have to learn about the Buddha's model of the mind. You have to know what a delusion is. You have to know the difference between a delusion and a virtue. It's just like fundamental Buddhist psychology. If you don't know this, it's like a joke. You can't have renunciation. It's a joke. If you don't know what attachment is, how can you have renunciation? It's a joke. And if you don't know what renunciation is, you don't have a renunciation, you don't know what attachment is. If you don't know what attachment is, you can't possibly transform it in Tantra, for God Almighty's sake. I mean, if I went around here and asked you for definition of attachment, okay, what's the definition of attachment? Who knows the definition of attachment? What's attachment? I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'm in a bad mood tonight. What's attachment? Who wants to give a definition? What's attachment? Anybody know? What? No, that's the root delusion. What's attachment? And what is it more? Say more about it. What is attachment? Yeah, but what is it? What does it do? How does it function? Okay, that's the closest so far to correct. The parts of what you said were true, but what that is the unique characteristic of attachment. Is well, first of all, it's a conceptual thought, which is a big surprise to us. It's a thought, a story, a concept that exaggerates the nice qualities of something. All the delusions have that one very specific function. They exaggerate. So attachment is a state of mind, a concept that over-exaggerates the nice qualities of something, that then causes you to hanker after it. It's got a whole other functions, but that's the bare bones of what it is. It's got multiple functions. It causes the thing to look more delicious. Then it causes you to grasp at it, the clinging part, to grasp at it. Because why? Because it looks delicious, and then the big mistake is you believe when you get it, you'll get happy. All of that is part of the lie of attachment. So this key delusion, which gives rise to the others, but which, your mistake was, it actually is a symptom of ego grasping. Ego grasping is a colloquial term for the root delusion called ignorance or maripa, unawareness. This is the root delusion that's removed from the mind when we realize emptiness. That's the root delusion, the main one. Attachment is its main voice. And then anger or aversion is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And attachment is what runs the show in day-to-day life. Then all the other delusions, the other neuroses, the other negative states of mind, arrogance, jealousy, depression, these things. Attachment isn't. So renunciation, as Lama Zopa says, you've got renunciation when just the thought of another moment of attachment is so disgusting. It's like, he says different things. And two things he said. One of them is, it's so disgusting, just the thought of another moment of attachment. Just the thought of it. Not even having it. Just the thought of it is so disgusting, it's like being in a septic tank. And the other one he said, it's so disgusting, it's like using used toilet paper. Okay? So, way to go. But at least understanding it intellectually and observing it. And without understanding this, which is what you get in the second scope, and then without understanding how it's disgusting and how it causes you suffering, then you can't have renunciation. And without all that, it is literally impossible to cultivate very much compassion. And then it's impossible to understand Tantra, because the key thing in Tantra is, one of the key things is the ability to utilize the energy of bliss, which is generated by contact with attachment objects. So until you've unpacked and understood deeply and well and given up attachment, and you won't give it up until you understand it, and you won't understand it until you study it, and you can't really see it until you go into your mind. And if you don't study it and know what it is and can't give the definition, how will you recognize it in your mind? You won't. If you're looking for a weed in the garden, but you don't even know what a weed looks like, well, you'll never get rid of weeds, will you? You've got to know what it is exactly, identify it when you see it, and then learn to pull it out. The same with our mind. So it's impossible to get compassion without with attachment, and without renunciation. And it's impossible to practice Tantra without renunciation. So that's the basic one, first one. Then in terms of even getting compassion, as His Holiness says, you cannot have compassion until you have renunciation. I mean, genuine compassion. We can practice. Why genuine compassion is what? Well, it's exactly the same two components. It's got exactly the same two components as renunciation. The difference is the object is others and not the self. So renunciation is, one, I am sick of my suffering. And remember, to understand this, you have to know what suffering is, and that you'll learn in the First Noble Truth. And there's 3 kinds of suffering. So you've got to really deeply understand what a suffering is. And that really takes time. 3 kinds of suffering. And then you've got to see and then the second one of renunciation, you've got to first be fed up with suffering. And then second, the real point, the one that makes it renunciation, is now you know what the causes are. Your karma and your delusions. When you've got those 2, you've got renunciation. Now that is now the basis for valid compassion. Because compassion goes like this. Oh my God, look at that suffering out there. And you are revolted by it. It is unbearable to you, just like your own. And second, you know why they're suffering. Because of their karma and their delusions. That's valid compassion. Right now, the compassion we have is very, very distorted because it's based upon anger. The only compassion we have is for innocent victims. Usually it's about children and animals. That's about it. Children and animals. We have compassion for them. But our compassion is based upon the logic. You see the dog being harmed and you can't wait to be angry with the guy who kicked the dog. We think that's compassion. We have compassion for our people, and so we hate those people and then go and drop bombs on them. You know, we have compassion for our baby, and so we hate the rapist of our child. Children are getting raped every day, but we don't care until it's our child because of attachment. That's how we are. So our view of compassion now is really limited. This other view of compassion is beyond outrageous, and you cannot possibly have it until you've got renunciation. We've got to have the nuts and bolts of this stuff really clear in our minds, you know. So without renunciation, you can't really begin to have compassion. Without compassion, it's not possible to have bodhicitta. And then, of course, without renunciation, you can't have emptiness. No way. Because if you don't have renunciation, you've got ego grasping and attachment to the delusions, all there upholding the sense of I. Well, there's never in a million years you can ever realize emptiness as long as you cling to the I. And they all fit into each other perfectly, you know. We can see logically how they all fit. Logically how they all fit. Okay? What else? What else am I supposed to say? Huh? Will that do? Any questions then, people? Any doubts, questions, confusions, please, just anything you like. I promise I won't be mean. Yes? What? What, sweetheart? Yes, good. Go, darling. Talk to me, darling.
Okay, I have a question about karma.
Sure, sweetheart.
I know we're affected by our karma, you know. I wonder, are we affected by other people's karma?
So why don't you
Or is-
explain what you mean?
Okay,
Give a little example.
I'll give you an example. Just, you know, let's say I marry a man whose wife is bipolar. So
Sorry, say that again. What?
Let's say I marry a man whose wife is bipolar.
But you just married him. How could you marry a man with a wife?
What? I mean, whose mother
Sorry.
is, I'm sorry.
His
whose
mother.
Whose mother is bipolar.
Well, first of all, I don't want to talk these terms. I want to use Buddhist psychology. So what is the Buddhist view? What's the Buddhist words for a person who's bipolar? I can't stand all these pathetic Western views. It's nonsense. So how would you think a Buddhist would call a person who's bipolar? What do you think it would be?
I don't
Try and imagine what delusions are mainly involved in bipolar. What's bipolar?
know. Mentally ill.
No,
Mental
come on.
illness.
What's bipolar? Right, good. And so so when the mind is all up, that's attachment, isn't it? Gone mad, attachment, right? Well then, and then when you go down, you're all depressed and miserable. Well, it's called attachment and depression out of control. Prefer to use that than boring old bipolar, okay?
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I understood.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
So you've got a person whose mother has lots of attachment and lots of depression. Now, just please wait. Are you saying that this guy your husband has a mother who has lots of attachment and gets depressed and up and down like yo-yo? Well, you know what I'd like to say, first of all? Join the club, baby. That sounds like a regular person.
Well, I'm not married. I'm just asking.
I
for
know
something.
you are, but I'm trying to break down all these ridiculous terms we all use.
Okay.
We've got to unpack these ridiculous terms. I do know what you're saying, darling. Get to the point.
Okay. My point is, when I have to deal with this person,
Which person?
my mother-in-law.
Darling, oh, God almighty, I can't stand these conversations. Precious girl. Go on, I'll let you finish. Oh.
You promised.
Oh.
You promised
Oh.
you wouldn't be mean. You promised
What?
to be nice.
I did. I'm not being mean. I'm just being impatient. Go on. Go on, darling.
You're not being very compassionate. My question is this my karma? Is this
What does karma mean, darling? Explain to me what you mean by karma. What do you think karma means, sweetheart? What does karma mean, darling? What's your name, please?
Wanda?
Wanda. What's karma mean, sweetheart? How do you understand karma?
The cause and effect.
Yeah, but explain what it means in terms of your life. In
terms
ordinary, simple words. What does it mean, sweetheart?
To me,
Yeah.
I mean, in this, what we're talking about,
Yes.
it means her actions or my actions affecting the person, you know?
No, that doesn't mean karma at all. What does karma mean? What do you think it means for you,
I
Wanda?
just told you cause and effect.
Excuse me, then this is a result of cause and effect too. So what does that help? How does that help me understand karma? So glass is karma, is it? It's meaningless,
No.
darling. What does it mean? What else do you understand from karma?
Oh my God.
Sweetheart, if you knew the answer, you'd be able to answer your own question. This is what I could give you an answer really simply. I'm very good at giving answers.
Okay.
But I don't want to spoon feed you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing that point, Wanda?
Mm-hmm.
So can you say a little bit more to me from what you've learned from the Buddhist teachings about what karma means? Anything that you can remember. What do you think it means, Precious?
Well, it means that how my actions are a consequence of my past. What I have to live now is a consequence of my past actions.
Right. So then give an example of an action and a result. What's
Well-
another principle about karma?
Well, if I have done something negative, then
Right.
I'm not going to be punished, but as a result of my negative actions, something negative is
And
going
what
to be
about
happening.
positive actions?
Well, the same thing.
Same thing. Okay, good. So tell me do you know the different ways that your past karma can ripen in the present? Can you think of some categories of ways your karma ripens? Do you remember any of those teachings? No?
I'm really nervous at this point.
I know you are, darling.
You're just
But,
putting me on the
but
spot.
Wanda, I can simply give you an answer, but I think that's spoon-feeding you.
I understand.
So we're just trying to have a conversation. I'm not trying to be mean, I promise. I'm trying to help you understand. Because if you can unpack it like this, you will be able to answer your own questions. So it's like, okay, so have you heard about how karma can ripen in several ways? For example, if you look into a person's mind and you see somebody has a tendency to lie, can you see how that's a result of their past lying? Can you see that a person might have a tendency to be lied to by other people? And that's another way that your past lying can ripen for you. Have you heard about that? Okay, good. Now we're getting closer to home. So now you're telling me in your life, let's say, you have a person out there who's crazy, let's say, and they're in your family. Okay, so if you understand that is the kind of karma called experiences similar to the cause. The one, if it's a tendency in your mind, it's called the action similar to the cause. If it's out there in front of you and it's happening to you, it's called an experience similar to the cause. So the simple way to apply the teachings of karma would be, well, this is interesting. I've got a person in my life who is my husband's mother who's a wacko. That must mean, and she's causing me troubles, and she criticizes me, and she's up and down, and she's emotional. Well, this indicates something about my past actions. Well, thank you for showing me, and I'm now going to try and practice patience. When you understand that, you can extrapolate, and you can come to that conclusion, can't you?
Yeah.
So then that's your answer.
Okay.
Does it answer, though, for you?
Yes, it does.
Good, darling. But to bring it back to the way you asked the question, you said, can my karma affect other people? Or can their karma affect me?
No.
What did you say?
No, that's not what
What was your question?
To know. My question was, if this karma, okay, my having to deal with this situation, is this her karma and I'm involved in it, or is this part of
But when
my
you
own
understand the
karma?
meaning of the
Yes,
word
yes.
karma, you wouldn't ask that question.
No, I understand now with your answer.
Good. So then she is sitting there with her own mind, isn't it? And she's come from past lives and got do good actions and bad actions, and she's going through her trips and her tendencies and her miseries and her delusions, right? That's her stuff, due to her actions. And then because you've got some history with her, you bump into her again. You must have met her before, and so the way she's behaving, even though she mightn't be directly doing it to you, is part of your karma to have in a world to be occupied by a crazy. So they say, for example, one of the consequences of, past, say, killing would be that you'd live in an environment where people are dying all the time. So that's their karma to die, but it's your karma due to past killing that you're surrounded by people who keep dying young. So when you understand that karma is in terms of your tendencies, your own particular mind, and then the other two are your experiences, the way people see you and treat you, but the other one is environmental, which doesn't just mean the moon and the stars and the dirt. It means even the people. Like let's say you got karma to be, due to past stealing, you'd be surrounded by people who do lots of stealing. So if you look at your outside world, look at the world outside you, which is full of people and things, right, and events. That's your experience similar to the cause, and it's your environmental karma. There's two ways of dividing the outside world for you.
Okay.
Are you seeing my point?
Yes.
Your own internal is your tendencies. The outside is your experiences, how people directly see you and treat you. They rape you, they love you, they hate you. Or just what you're observing out there, a lot of poverty, a lot of ugly, let's say harsh, bad, disharmonious speech. The environmental result will be in a future life to be surrounded by people who are not trustworthy. It might be you they're not trustworthy of, but just generally. So if the people in the world are environmental, then the individual one is how they treat us. So it's experiences similar to the cause, and it's environmental karma. And then your own is your tendencies. Those three are the way the world works. And for everybody, we've got all these three all the time. Do you see what I'm trying to say? When you understand this way, you can answer your own questions.
Okay.
Do you see?
Thank you.
Good, Wanda. Thank you for your wonderful example. Are we communicating, people? It's like mathematics. You learn the basics, and then you've got to do your own sums after that. You don't keep going to your teacher, oh, what's 1 and 1 is, what's 1 and 1? Then you hear another sum, 2 and 3. Oh, what's 2 and 3? Once you've got the basics, you can get your own answers, can't you? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Are you seeing? That's why you have to learn the basics of the teachings, because it's just a worldview. It's a scientific worldview, and you use the nuts and bolts to come to your own conclusions, you know? That's how we answer our questions. Okay, what else? Yes, darling. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. What's your name, please?
Mirna. Mirna.
Mina.
Mirna.
Milna.
Mirna.
Spell it.
Mirna.
Oh, Mirna.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mirna. Go on.
Okay. In the same line that
Yes.
we were talking
Yeah.
about, I work in a hospital.
Yeah.
And I just heard that in a place that with so much people dying, and where I work with, people die
Yes.
every day. So it makes me think that I did some quite killing in the past. Yeah?
It could be that, but then if your purpose of being there is to help people, why are you in the hospital? To sweep the floors, to heal people? What's your job there?
In the lab.
In the lab, okay.
Lab, yeah. Well, I was wondering, because sometimes when I am working, I have to do, okay. My basic work is always with body fluids,
Yes.
especially blood.
Yes, yes.
So when I work in the blood bank, preparing the blood for the next day surgeries, sometimes I wondered if all that blood that
Yes.
I'm now preparing for
Yes.
those to be healed
Yes.
and
yes.
to have life
Yes.
have to do because I shed that blood before,
No,
and now
that's
I'm
being,
giving.
no, I don't think
no?
so. No,
Okay,
that's not possible.
Can you explain?
No, that would be, I think, a bit exact.
Okay.
Because, no,
just trying to
because,
understand.
because the reason you're there is a technique to help people, isn't it?
Yes.
You're not there taking the blood out of the pigs to turn it into black sausage so people can have nice breakfast.
No. No,
Which is
thankfully.
delicious, I admit.
Yeah. Sometimes
you understand?
Sometimes we joke with that, but
Yeah, I
we
know.
don't do it.
I don't think that's at all the reason.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's obviously everything that we experience, everything we see, when we do finally understand karma, we'll be able to see exactly what and why and how.
That's what
But
I'm
I
trying
think
to
in
see.
general, though, the main one is if you think in terms of whether your job is virtuous or non-virtuous. Whether you're there because you're forced to be there, or whether you're there because, like if you're forced because you're in prison and they make you work in the slaughterhouse and you see the pig's blood every day. I mean, there's a big difference
Yep.
because you're choosing to be there. You've learned this skill so you
Yep.
can help people. I think it
Okay.
doesn't seem like, for me, what you said. I doubt it.
Okay. Oh, that's a relief.
Okay. Okay, what else? So is there anybody who was thinking of taking initiation in the future who has got some questions? Or not? You're quite happy. You're content. People. Huh? People? People who are thinking of taking the Introduction to Tantra class because you're thinking you're ready to take an initiation at some point. If anybody is in that position, do you have any questions? Those people. No? Or you have a question, you think, am I qualified? Do I think, am I not really qualified? I mean, are you not clear about how you're qualified to take an initiation? Nobody has these questions? I'm not saying you should have, I'm just making sure in case you have. Huh? Nobody? Yes, Mirna. Mike. Yes.
For me, there is always that question, am I
Yes.
qualified?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
maybe I don't know fully
Yes.
what all those vows and commitments really mean,
Yes.
when you go in detail
Yes.
with each one,
Yes.
because they are many.
Yes.
And sometimes we just overlook them
Yes,
because
that's
we
right.
don't know out of
I understand.
ignorance.
I understand.
So sometimes I feel like I'm not ready, and I don't know if I will ever be because
No, I understand.
I am so ignorant.
I know. Okay. My feeling is, no, this is according to the teachings. First, the basis is you've got a genuine, okay, I'll put it into my words, okay, the way I talk. If you really have confidence in the Buddha, you like the Buddha's teachings, you have confidence in these people that we see who are the exponents of these teachings, Courtin Rinpoche, Yangtze Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. If you have a feeling of this validity of these people as a system, and if they have done it, there must be something in it, that kind of view. You're confident about the no creator business. If that's a conflict for your mind, then forget it. You really have a sense of confidence in the teachings. You don't have to know that much. You know, you don't have to have deep, deep knowledge of it all, but a genuine, comfortable feeling of confidence and faith in the teachings. That means renunciation, really seeing why it's reasonable to want to understand delusions and karma, and that's why you suffer. To really understand the reason to have compassion, and to therefore have bodhicitta, and to really see the understanding of emptiness and the role that plays in the teachings, to really get a feeling for these and understand them and want to understand them more, and those three is the basis of then entering into, with faith and confidence and a willingness to commit for the logical reason that you know this is the quickest method to enlightenment. With that attitude, you are qualified, baby. And I would say, because, I mean, these old lamas, since I've become a nun, since I've met the lamas, there's 2 entire generations of old lamas passed away. All the root lamas of our lamas have all passed away. You know, His Holiness's lamas, all the other lamas, the whole generation have gone. And now this latest generation, you know, Courtin Rinpoche is like 80-something. His Holiness himself, I didn't want to speak about his 80 this year, you know, or whatever year it is, next year. Somehow this next generation. So my feeling is if we have faith in this path, we have a Lama, we've got a good center, you've got teachings, you've got good Vajra brothers and sisters, my goodness, do not waste time. Do not waste time. But we've got to be brave, you know. We've got to be a bit committed, a bit brave. I mean, to be just cautious and think, oh, there's too many vows, I don't want to take that. It's like not seeing the real point. If we want to get enlightened, we've got to work a bit hard, you know. So be knowing to wish just to keep the vows and commitments purely, which will not take that much time to have a genuine wish to do it and a little bit of understanding of it. Of course, to really understand them deeply means more practice. But what else are we doing in our lives, you know? If this is the purpose of our life, then go for it, you know, please. We need a connection with these holy beings, you know. And we need initiations into Tantra to get enlightened even. So not to rush in stupidly, but not to be overcautious and think we're never qualified. Because that's, when we look at it technically, the qualification is to have an appreciation for, at the least, if not a realization of, renunciation, bodhicitta, emptiness. It doesn't say to have realizations. It doesn't say to have to practice 24 hours a day. It doesn't say all that. It just simply, we're understanding those three. That's the basis. They're the prerequisites. Do you understand? So it seems like if you've got that, and you have faith in these lamas, and you want to stay close to them, then you're qualified. But, yeah, have some courage. Do you understand? What else? Huh? Is that enough? What's tomorrow? The same. We've run out. What haven't, okay, in the period I've been here, what haven't we covered? Did we talk about four opponent? We did talk about purification, didn't we, the weekend? We've talked about emptiness. Did we talk about it? Did we do the 8 verses or anything, or the bodhicitta path much? We didn't, did we? So maybe tomorrow we'll do that. We did do that? Oh, we did. Oh, I did already. Oh. I'm sure we'll find something to talk about tomorrow. Was I? Well, that was just that letter from Pemo. Okay, I will ask you. Huh? Yes, darling. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you, darling. It's very kind. I will. So let's think what we've talked about since I've been here. Karma is always so important to talk about. The mind, the delusions, understanding the mind, we talk about that. Emptiness, we have to talk about that. Bodhicitta, we have to talk about that. All of these things. Yeah. The vows. Maybe go through them more. Okay, maybe we can go through the Bodhisattva vows. We can do that. All right, we'll do that. Okay. Time to go home? Time to go home? Yes? Time to go home? Yes, darling. Yes, Gloria. Yes, sweetheart.
Yesterday, when you were talking about when the people die, when we died,
Yes.
to leave us alone for 3 days, what about if I want to give my organs?
Yes, this is one of the chapters in the book. Yes. Generally speaking, as Lama Zopa says, you ask the hospital to let let them keep your body for as long as possible before they take you away. Even an hour. It's really important. And the same with any hospital. They're not going to give you a bed for more than an hour, whether they take your organs or not, or a sudden death in a hospital or somewhere. So usually as much as possible to do the few prayers, to pull at the thing, to say mantras, to do all the things to prepare, and then to make sure the consciousness is gone. And by doing this here, tapping or pulling here, this can encourage the consciousness to go from there. Once you know the consciousness is gone, they can do what they like with your body. Doesn't matter. But even I've heard all the lamas say, all the lamas. I remember one of our monks who started Karuna Hospice service in Australia in the 80s. He interviewed lamas from all the traditions and the same questions, and they all answered the same way, that anybody who, out of compassion, has decided to offer their organs, even if they disturb the person's mind before the person's mind leaves the body, because of their motivation of compassion, it will not be a problem.
Oh, okay.
All the lamas say that. But the thing is to make sure, if you are, the person who's going to give their organs, you make sure you do everything you can to get the prayers done, even an hour. And then the main one, tap here. This is the main one you can do to an animal as well. If you've got to get rid of I remember one time in Kathmandu, Rinpoche was there and we were having lunch, and then he decided we would all go to the Swayambhu Stupa to circumambulate. And so we took the ring road, and my friend was driving, and then she ran over a family of ducks, mummy duck and baby ducks, And all the little ducklings and mummy duck got away, but one of the little baby ducks got sploshed by the truck, by our car. So there we are in the middle of the ring road in Kathmandu, which is like the freeway, in the middle of the road, Lama Zopa's doing powa, on the little baby duck. I'll never forget this little baby duck. Its little heart was half out of its body, going boom, boom. You could see it, little heart beating. It was amazing.
Aww.
But he's all this time, and all he did was, this is the main thing, pushing at the crown chakra, because the consciousness which is at the heart chakra, when it all absorbs, it will leave from here, from the eyes, from the mouth, from the anus, from the feet. It can leave anywhere. The most important is to tap here, and because wherever you touch, it can energize the mind to leave from there. So the most important thing for the animal, if they had to bury it soon, for your mummy, for your grandma, for giving organs, whatever it is, you do the prayers, shout in the ear, say prayers, say mantras, put the mantras on the body, different things to do. But the thing is here, you press, you tap here very strongly. The central channel, if the spine went all the way up, the central channel is just in front of the spine. So that you're going to feel it sort of around there. This is where your crown chakra is. And if you pull there and tap very strongly, many times, that can encourage the consciousness to leave from there. And then once it's left from there, it can only go to a pure land. There's no other choice. So that's the thing. But with your animals, for sure, that same thing, Yeah?
Another question. What is the Buddha's definition for schizophrenia?
Schizophrenia. Well, it seems to me there's so many symptoms of a person who's called schizophrenic, isn't it? But a very common one of hearing voices. One of the Buddhist explanations is that they are literally possessed by a type of sentient being called a spirit, which is a very suffering sentient being, we talked about this, due to strong attachment. You're born as a spirit, meaning your mind is joined with your body's like air energy. So you're rushing around, and because of attachment, and because of strong connection with certain people, you will literally possess them. You will affect them. People have this experience. So common to have this experience. People see spirits that come at night. they disturb them, especially at night when you're more vulnerable, when you're trying to sleep, you know. The spirits will possess, and some spirits live inside people, and they harm them, scream and yell and abuse them. Many people who think they're crazy are not crazy. They're possessed by spirits. That would be a very typical thing. You know, there's certain practices that we can do sometimes, that what can be done to help. But it depends, you know. The point is, the Buddhist view, okay, if we think of the 4 ways of karma ups, like Wanda's told, you know, if we look into the mind of a person, the mind, the person's own tendencies. And this is an interesting point, because in the West, as soon as we see a person's mind, we keep thinking what the mother must have done and what the father must have done and what the husband did and what the people out there did to them, as if that's going to explain it to us. But that's not the point here. If you see a child, for example, who's very needy, we'll immediately think, well, what did their mother do? That's not the issue. The neediness is their own strong attachment. You're born with it. If a person's very angry, don't assume their father beat them up. That's their own anger that they brought with them. So lots of people, you know, like a child wants to torture a creature. No one can understand that. But if we understand karma, it's from past being an animal, where you bring this tendency, you're really attracted to want to torture something. So when you see it as a tendency in the mind, what I'm trying to get at is this. There's 2 things. There's the karmic tendencies we bring with us, which explains why a person wants to torture, why a person wants to kill, why a person wants to be loving, why a person wants to go fishing, why a person gets angry, why a person gets jealous. Are you kind of hearing my point? There's the tendencies. It's not complicated. This indicates the past habit that you brought with you, programmed with in this life. And then you add to that mix all the other states of mind. And then you've got a person, and you can begin to understand a person really well. So some people, you know, who, say, feel very paranoid around other people. Well, this is simply the consequence of harming other people. You don't like sentient beings, you know. A person who imagines being harmed. Literally, you know, all these conspiracy people, conspiracy theories of people from the other planets coming to harm them and the government and trying to... You understand that kind of thing? This is their own deluded mind. It can be spirits, but it's their own deluded mind because of past harming, past cheating. They come up with all these stories in their head, you know. So, what am I saying here? I'm trying to say just to understand a person, why they are the way they are. You just got to look at the tendency itself, you know. I'm not trying to think of what a person did to cause it. Now, why did I bring this up? What was the reason I brought this? Yeah, schizophrenia, right, all these words we use in the West. I'm not putting down Western psychology. We do amazing things. But so often us Buddhists use these terms as so serious, whereas, excuse me, please hear this point. Every time we talk about attachment, anger, jealousy, depression, it sounds kind of simple, doesn't it? Then you hear, oh, schizophrenia, bipolar. It sounds more serious, right? Well, you know, Buddhist psychology talks about attachment, anger, jealousy, pride. And that the understanding of Buddhist psychology for the Buddha has been the method for him to remove all delusions from the mind, to realize emptiness, to develop bodhicitta and become a Buddha. So I think if that's good enough for the Buddha, it's good enough for me. Are you kind of hearing my point? Why do we need to keep buying into the Western view all the time, as if that's serious and this is just kind of religion or something? Are you communicating with me? So that means we need to study. I mean, if you really do study in depth Buddhist psychology, it'll blow your mind how subtle it is, how sophisticated it is, how complex it is. It would absolutely blow your mind. And we're not talking about the brain. We're talking about your own mental tendencies. It's such an amazing way of describing the mind, you know. Have you studied it all here? Low rig, these things? No, you haven't studied low rig. Veronica? We've studied low rig here? The text that they use in the monasteries is to understand the mind. Perception, conception, sensory, mental, all these things. As well as all the 51 mental factors. You've never studied it. Well, may I recommend that it's about time you do. Okay? Ask someone to come. Ask someone to come and teach it and study it. It's most fascinating. It really is. When you read some of the commentaries, it's just too hard to understand. It's too complicated. But it's an amazing way to describe the mind. It's an amazing way to understand the mind. It's astonishing. But it doesn't, most people about them, when they come to think of Buddhist psychology, they think mindfulness is about the best they can say. You understand? It really is extraordinary to understand it a bit more deeply, because that's the tools you need to understand your mind. So if you've never learned botany, how could you be a gardener, please? If you've never learned recipes, how can you be a cook? Well, if you've never learned Buddhist psychology, how can you say you're a Buddhist? It confuses me. Do you not hear my question?
Yes.
Do you not hear the point?
Yeah.
We all say the word attachment thinking we understand it. But, you know, 3 people said something they thought maybe was a definition. That means we don't know what it is. Well, if you don't know what it is, how can you recognize it? It's hardly... Huh? The text, the classic L-O-R-I-G, mind and awareness, is the typical text that's used in the monasteries for the last 2,000 years to study the epistemological and the psychological models of the mind according to Buddhism. And there's some, the trouble is it is so intellectual. The first part, it's quite complex and so many divisions and definitions and terms and things, but it can be taught simply. The essence of it can be taught. It really does.
And again, the title of the book again?
What book, darling?
No, the text of Low-Rig.
It's just called Low-Rig. L-O-R-I-G. It's translated as mind and awareness. And it's a typical text that's taught in all the Tibetan monasteries. It's come from India. It's a Theravadan text. And it teaches the 2 main ways of the mind. The epistemological model of the mind, which is the way the mind works. Mental, sensory. Within the mental, there's conception, perception. There's all these different divisions of the way the mind works. It's quite complex. And then you've got the psychological model of the mind, which we talk about all the time, these delusions, how they function, a virtue, how they function, what they are, what are the divisions, the 6 this, the 20 that. It's really most fascinating, and it's the basis of understanding the way the mind works, which is the basis of everything in Buddhism. So without it, you can't really go very deep into being a Buddhist. So I really recommend, you know, you learn it. Yes, you know.
About the body part, how do you differentiate if a person is having many sicknesses? Is it because it's possessed by a spirit or because of own karma?
You mean in the case of a person who is possessed by a spirit?
No. How to differentiate
Between?
between those 2 when a person is full of sicknesses? A person
But it's just but if there's one, according to the Tibetan medical system, they feel your pulses and they can tell whether spirit is one of the causes of it, possession by spirit. They can see by looking at your urine, they can tell that you're possessed by spirits. Okay. So being possessed by a spirit, there's many different ways this can cause problems. It can, you know, if you're possessed by a spirit and they're harming you internally by talking to you and making you do things, that's one way. Okay. But the other one is they can cause you sickness. So years ago, I had sciatic pain, very seriously for 2 years. I couldn't walk more than a few meters. Luckily, when I sat down, the pain was gone. But the moment I walked, I couldn't. It was 2 years, and nothing would make it go away. And I checked with Lama Zopa, and he said it was interference from spirits. That's what they say. So the whole place is full of spirits, full of all kinds of sentient beings. And so because many of them are born, because they're a spirit, they're born there because of strong attachment. And so they're attached to people, attached to animals, and therefore get upset easily. So one of the commonest things that one of the lamas told me, that the spirits will interfere with you, like if you upset them, if you hurt them, or if you pee under a tree where they live, they will make you sick. So this spirit, I must have upset a spirit somehow. So it caused me to get sciatica. And as long as the spirit is harming you, you won't get better. Many of the illnesses in the West that we say are incurable, like the things that we think there's no real cure for, like cancer. This is commonly considered to be caused by spirits. Many of the skin diseases that seem to be very difficult to cure are caused by spirits. This is how they talk, okay? So, okay, I'm just telling you. So, in my case, for example, that means I had the karma from my own karma due to past negativity to get sick, called sciatica, but there happened to be the cause of it was a spirit interfering with me. So it's, you know, it's just like you got the karma to get hurt, but you get the karma to someone punch you in the nose. That's how you get hurt.
Okay.
A spirit is just a sentient being whom you have connection with, whom you must have upset. Do you understand?
If that would be the case, then how can I pacify or
You
what,
can.
what
There's
do I
all these
do
lots of,
to the
this is
spirit
one
to
of the
leave me
main
alone?
jobs of these lamas. They're doing it all the time.
Okay.
One of the commonest, you know, so for example, when people come and ask me this, you know, there's certain practices that you can do. One particular practice is very powerful that can help remove the spirit. Or the one often, because our monastery, Courtin Monastery in Kathmandu, the one monk there whose full-time job is to answer inquiries from all over the world, and then they go to the tantric monks there, because there's a whole monastery of tantric monks, and there's a geshe there who does the observations. And they'll ask, you'll email and you'll go, you know, my friend Mary says she's hearing this and that. Is it interference from spirits? And you'd make, and then they would, the geshe would check up with the observation, and then they will say, yes, there is, and we recommend you do this puja, that puja, this puja. And then sometimes the practice themselves. I mean, there's certain mantras a person can do. I've seen it myself. It's been successful. One boy came to me one time, said that suddenly one day he started hearing all these voices. And of course, he's called crazy. But in fact, these people, and abusing him, constant abuse. Not touching his body. Some people get affected by their body, but just possessing his body and constantly abusing him, unceasingly, day and night, completely going crazy. So I gave him this mantra that I know. I said, just say this mantra. And next day he emailed and said the spirits had stopped. So you can have a lot of success with this. With my thing, my sciatica for 2 years, eventually what happened was some people I knew at Courtin asked Lama Lundup for a practice that they could do to help me. And so they did White Tara practice. And I didn't know they were doing it, but I knew one day something had changed. And I went to my acupuncture friend, 2 treatments, and it finished. So as soon as the spirit interference is gone, which you have to get from the lamas to do, prayers and pujas and offerings and special things, that helps the spirits go. Then the sickness can get better.
Sorry.
What, go on?
No.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to a lama...
Well, then too bad, unfortunate. You know, it's difficult. I'm not saying too bad, that's terrible. But many people all over the world suffering all the time in this way, being possessed, made crazy. One lama went to one, you know, insane asylum in Spain when he first came to Europe in the 70s, and he just went around, he said they're all possessed. So common, very, very, very common. It's such a terrible suffering for people. But sometimes the karma between the spirit and the person is so strong, even the lamas intervening can't help. The karma is so strong. So it's a very terrible way to suffer.
And what kind of mantra can you do?
Well, if a person wants to
From
know
your
the mantra,
part, you know.
you do any mantras. Okay. Anything, if you have this, but if anybody does, but I don't want to give it in public, it's not appropriate. But if people want, they can request, you know. Yeah. Yes, darling.
One thing I want to make an observation from my point of view. One of the things I just, from her inquiry, is that when we do Guru Puja, there is a part that when you ask your Lama to go inside, or to, you know, dissolve in you, then you're blessed and protected by him.
So what's your point?
Okay, that's an observation. Sometimes.
What do you mean an observation?
An observation is when you, if she has an inquiry, sometimes if we can make something for ourselves, if some spirit or something is bothering us, you can just rely on your guru. No?
Well, of course. That's a method. It's the best method. Of course it is.
That's the best
but,
method.
you know, if you don't have, this is the point she's saying, if people don't have this, what can you do? It's very painful, isn't it? Most people.
Yeah, it's painful.
That's right. And it can happen to anybody. I mean, there's a friend I know who's very close to Lama Zobrahmacharya. She's a very good practitioner, and she became possessed by spirits, and it was very intense, and the Lamas worked very closely with her. They can harm all kinds of people. They can harm even high beings. One of our geshes a very special young man in Courtin was killed by a spirit, thrown off the roof. You know, he's a little Rinpoche now. So they can be very powerful. There's, you know, you hear about how also some of the spirits are very powerful and harmful, can cause like weather problems, like hurricanes and cyclones can be harming from spirits. Harming from spirits. There are all kinds of spirits. Like, you know how there are all kinds of humans, all kinds of animals. There are all kinds of spirits. And a spirit is, okay, spirit in the Buddhist view of the 6 realms of existence, generally in the Lam Rim, you'll read they refer to that one as hungry ghosts. Well, hungry ghosts are just a very specific group of the bigger group called spirits. And the prevalent delusion for the cause of the spirit birth is attachment. So you can either be like that, the story I told about the man and his thermos. Remember that story I told you? Or some of you heard that story. That was a little old spirit who was a villager who was attached to his thermos and freaked out and gave it to one of the nuns, and she didn't give it back, and so he possesses the nun to get his thermos back. That's a typical kind of story. The other kind are these very powerful spirits who even act like they're holy beings, people who channel people. They're just spirits. They sound like holy, but they're spirits. People who say they're Mozart and that kind of thing. They're spirits, you know, but very manipulative. Some can be very powerful. Some can be unbelievably harmful. Like I said, causing huge weather systems, destroying people, really powerful. So they're not to be played with, you know. I mean, they're very, very, very suffering sentient beings. So this is why, for a Buddhist, one of the main practices is to have faith, is to pray to the Buddha, pray to the Guru, and you by saying mantra. This way, if you do see spirits, you're helping them, but you're protecting yourself. I've had one example in my life, you know, when years ago, when I was living in one of our centres in England, I woke up in the middle of the night, crystal clear. I knew a being was coming in the window here. They came and they lay on top of me and suffocated me. And I just said, "Oh, mani padme hung," and they walked away and went out the door. So you know, not to be sentimental about it. Some people see a lot of these spirits and don't mind, but they're very attached. So it's not to encourage them, and certainly to say mantras for their benefit. That's for their benefit. Have compassion, but it needs to be wrathful sometimes. And so often the mantras you say are wrathful compassion, because you've got to protect yourself. You can't encourage them to come. It's foolish. That's really sentimental rubbish, you know. You need to protect as well as be of benefit. And you see it with the lamas when they do what, you know, we call in the West exorcism. They use very wrathful methods to make the spirit leave. You know, they beat the person and shout at the spirit to make them go, because they're very, very grasping, super grasping, and they can harm, destroy, kill. So it's really important to not be sentimental about them, you know. And the main one is protection. You really could say that if in our lives we don't get harmed by spirits, and maybe most of us don't, it's not because we're just lucky, it's because we've got a lot of virtue and a lot of merit. So you must never forget that, because there's so many harmful beings around, and there's so many spirits harming. They harm animals. Many of those babies, I would think, the one who just die, no one knows why. This is the, you know, spirits harm, and they take life. That's what they do. That spirit who came to me was going to suffocate me, you know, but I said one mantra, it left. So anyway, sentient beings, suffering sentient beings, suffering sentient beings. Okay. So we finish another night, 2 hours of who knows what. All these seeds in our mind, so much to think about. So have the wish to never give up. Have the wish to be brave, to take vows, take commitments, and be brave and know we can do it. And all it is methods to help us become the Buddha, which is what we say we want to become. You know, so have some enthusiasm for it. Some enthusiasm. You know, we didn't talk about the 6 perfections, did we? Maybe we'll talk about the 6 perfections tomorrow. Yeah? 6 perfections. We'll talk about that. Okay. So let's dedicate. Thank you.
Madre Tare, liberando del samsara. Tu Tare, liberando de los 8 temores. Tara, Madre que libera. Por favor, otorga el don de la longevidad. Por las bendiciones de los gurus, raíz y del linaje. Por los logros espirituales de los Yidan, dioses y diosas. Por los métodos hábiles de las dakinis y los protectores del Dharma. Que podamos realizar gozosamente la esencia de nuestras esperanzas. Gendun Tenzin, eres afable, benevolente y bondadoso. Por favor, permanece con nosotros durante una larga vida. Expande tus actividades iluminadas en todas las direcciones y continúa madurando y sustentándonos a mí y a todos los seres sintientes. Desde este momento y durante todas nuestras vidas, manténnos bajo tu tutela. Sé nuestro amigo, nuestro divino y virtuoso guía. Limpia la degeneración de la ignorancia. Ayúdanos a realizar rápidamente nuestro recorrido por los senderos y caminos y alcanzar los 3 cuerpos de un Buda, por la verdad de la realidad incambiable y por la bendición conjunta de la indestructible Sangha, que la esencia de estas oraciones se logre rápidamente. Que por los méritos de esta virtud pueda alcanzar rápidamente el estado de un Guru Buda y pueda llevar a este estado a todo ser sin excepción. La mente de iluminación es suprema y muy preciada, que donde no ha surgido surja, que donde ha surgido no disminuya, que cobre cada vez más fuerza. La visión correcta del vacío es suprema y muy preciada, que donde no ha surgido surja, que donde no ha surgido no disminuya, que cobre cada vez más fuerza. Así como el valiente Manjushri y Samantabhadra distinguieron los fenómenos tal cual son, yo también dedico estos méritos en la mejor forma, siguiendo su ejemplo perfecto. Dedico todas estas raíces de virtud con la dedicación que es considerada la mejor por los victoriosos asidos de los 3 tiempos para poder realizar todas las buenas obras.
May we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious lamas, with faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness. May their full inspiration flow into our hearts. And as Paponka Rinpoche said, 2 things I like what he says. One, first he says, if the guru isn't the Buddha, then who is? And then he says, you'd better choose your guru very carefully because you're going to end up like him. Okay? Okay? Bye. Thank you.
Bye. No se vayan, por favor, quédense un momentito. Un minutito.
My attachment object, I must take it. No, it won't go
It's
off.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Para el beneficio de todos ustedes que han estado escuchando que la Venerable ha estado mencionando mucho la psicología budista, en la página del centro nosotros tenemos un curso básico que fue preparado por unas compañeras psicólogas y es sobre la psicología budista. Así es que visiten la página, ábranlo, son 4 conferencias muy buenas que pueden aprovechar y entender mucho de por qué ella la está mencionando tanto. Gracias, buenas noches.
Sacarlo. Hay que sacarlo, dejarlo un rato, yo creo que... No, pero yo la dejé el teatro y no apagó. Déjame ver si allá.